When future historians trace the bloodlines of American power, they'll find their origins not in politics or banking, but in the fierce heat where iron became steel. And the country could only watch and marvel as ordinary families, merchants and immigrants, seize their moment in history, transforming industrial might into social power. Indeed, their furnaces forged more than metal. They created an American aristocracy whose influence would span centuries. From the smoky valleys where their empires began to the marble halls their descendants would rule, this is the story of how a single industry created some of America's most enduring dynasties. Picture yourself standing before an architectural marvel on New York's Riverside Drive, where a palace worthy of European royalty once commanded the Manhattan skyline. This was no ordinary mansion, but rather a testament to one man's audacious dream, a 75-room Renaissance chateau that cost an astronomical $7 million in 1906, equivalent to over $200 million today. And this architectural triumph, with its gold-leafed ceilings, private art gallery, and three-story pipe organ, stood as a monument to America's first age of excess. This was Riverside, the home of Charles M. Schwab, a man whose rise from mill worker to steel titan embodied the American dream. In the glittering realm of America's Gilded Age, where titans like Carnegie and Morgan reigned supreme, Schwab carved his own empire with theatrical flair. As the first president of U.S. Steel, the world's first billion-dollar corporation, he commanded an annual salary of $100,000 and a bonus of $1 million. Yet beneath the shimmer of success lay a tale of dramatic decline. He spent money like water, hosting lavish parties with champagne flowing, maintaining a fleet of yachts, and building palatial residences that could rival European aristocrats. His appetite for opulence stretched from his summer estate in Loretto, Pennsylvania, to grand philanthropic gestures that seemed more theatrical productions than charity. In today's episode, we'll explore the remarkable rise and tragic fall of Charles M. Schwab, from Pennsylvania's steel mills to a legacy lost, as the excesses of a gilded life faded into mere memories. He seemingly had it all, a fortune that would make today's billionaires raise their perfectly manicured eyebrows. Indeed, at his family's peak, Charles M. Schwab sat atop a staggering $40 billion empire in modern money, a sum that plants him firmly among America's Gilded Age titans. But it's how he flaunted it that would truly capture the attention. For example, his piece de resistance was the absolutely magnificent Riverside Mansion in Manhattan. A $200 million, in today's currency, icon of excess, this architectural marvel commandeers an entire city block on Riverside Drive. We're talking 75 rooms of pure French chateau opulence, complete with a Gothic chapel that would make Notre Dame blush and marble staircases that practically demand a grand entrance. The Palm Court accommodated 300 of society's finest, and the original Rodins graced the corridors like common decorations, while priceless European masterpieces adorn walls as casually as family photos. Furthermore, the ballroom, dripping in gold leaf and crystal, served as the stage where America's industrial royalty performs their social dance. But that's merely the city residence. Let's hop over to Immergrün, his summer sanctuary in Loretto, Pennsylvania. This 44-room countryside palace sprawled across 400 acres of what can only be described as botanical perfection. Indoor swimming pool, naturally, private theatre, but of course, bowling alley. Would you expect anything less? The man maintained a collection of properties that would make a real estate mogul weep. Hunting lodges in New Jersey, coastal retreats, urban investments that read like a Monopoly champion's portfolio. His yacht, Loretto, demanded $300,000 annually just for upkeep. That's the price of some people's homes, mind you. Yet beneath this cathedral of consumption lied a surprisingly generous heart. Loretto transformed under his patronage. Schools rose, churches appeared, infrastructure materialized. His charitable gifts matched his personal indulgences, dollar for dollar, funding everything from public libraries to technical schools, particularly in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Thus, it is heartbreaking to see the downfall of such an iconic man, who also happened to grow up with humble immigrant roots, as we'll see in the next chapter. In the shadow of Pennsylvania's Allegheny Mountains, where coal dust and Catholic crosses dotted the landscape in equal measure, the American story of Charles M. Schwab began not with grandeur, but with the quiet determination of German immigrants. His father, John Anthony Schwab, had crossed an ocean carrying little more than hope and calloused hands. The elder Schwab would marry Pauline Farabor, herself born to German-American stock, their union blessed in 1862 with a son who would one day command industrial empires. The family's move to Loretto, Pennsylvania, proved pivotal. It was a town where faith and commerce intertwined, where St. Francis College's spires pierced the mountain mist, and where John Anthony's modest wool and cotton business provided just enough, but only just enough. The young Charles, or Charlie, as townsfolk called him, absorbed lessons that no business school could teach. The weight of a dollar, the value of a handshake, the unwritten code of mountain communities where a man's word carried more currency than the contents of his wallet. In Loretto's Catholic schools, young Charlie's extraordinary gifts began to surface. His memory, described by teachers as near photographic, allowed him to recite entire passages of text after a single reading. But it was his peculiar alchemy of charm and capability that set him apart. Whether calculating complex sums in his head or organizing school events, Charlie Schwab possessed that rare ability to make everyone in his orbit feel like the most important person in the room. At 12, while other boys played at games, Charlie drove stakes for surveying teams, earning $1.50 daily, real money in mountain country. Later, behind the counter of Loretto's grocery store, he displayed an almost theatrical talent for commerce. Customers would watch, mesmerized, as he totaled complex orders in his head, all while engaging in the kind of warm banter that made them forget they were conducting business at all. His mother, Pauline, recognizing something extraordinary in her son, nurtured his gift for music alongside his mathematical prowess. Young Charlie's fingers, equally adept at piano keys and profit calculations, suggested a versatility that would later serve him well in both boardrooms and ballrooms. These seemingly disparate talents, artistic sensitivity and mathematical precision, would eventually combine to create something unprecedented in American industry. A businessman who could both master the minutiae of steel production and inspire thousands with the force of his personality. Yet as young Charlie stood on the cusp of manhood, destiny was preparing an encounter that would transform this promising mountain boy into an industrial legend. In the smoky streets of Pittsburgh, Andrew Carnegie, the nation's foremost steel baron, was about to meet a young man whose extraordinary combination of charm, ability, and ambition would reshape not just one industry, but the very nature of American business itself. In the smoke-filled world of Pittsburgh's steel mills, Charles Schwab's trajectory defied the established order of things. The young man who had once driven stakes in Loretto's mountain soil found himself driving ambition into the very heart of American industry. Carnegie Steel, that great crucible of industrial might, became his proving ground, and Andrew Carnegie himself, the diminutive Scotsman who controlled America's steel destiny, became his mentor. The transformation from manual laborer to engineering assistant took just 6 months, a promotion so swift it left whispers in its wake. But those who worked alongside young Schwab understood. Here was a man who could calculate complex metallurgical formulas in his head while simultaneously charming hardened mill workers and Eastern financiers alike. Carnegie, watching from his fortress-like offices, recognized something of himself in this young man who seemed to master every challenge with almost theatrical ease. By age 24, Schwab commanded Carnegie's Homestead Works, the crown jewel of the steel empire. Workers twice his age took orders from this wunderkind, who remembered not just their names, but their children's birthdays. At 35, he ascended to the presidency of Carnegie Steel, the youngest man ever to reach such heights. His methods differed dramatically from the iron-fisted approach of his contemporaries. Where others ruled through fear, Schwab led through an almost magnetic personal force, pioneering profit-sharing programs that transformed workers into stakeholders. The creation of U.S. Steel in 1901 revealed Schwab's true genius. In smoke-filled rooms where industrial titans plotted the future of American manufacturing, Schwab orchestrated a merger of unprecedented scale. The numbers were staggering. $492 million, America's first billion-dollar corporation. His personal stake, $28 million in stock, represented more wealth than most men could imagine. But for Schwab, this was merely a prelude. The acquisition of Bethlehem Steel in 1904 marked his masterpiece. The struggling company, under Schwab's guidance, became a laboratory for industrial innovation. His gamble on the Bethlehem H-beam, a revolutionary design that would literally reshape America's skylines, demonstrated both technological vision and commercial courage. Every major construction project of the era, from the George Washington Bridge's massive spans to the Chrysler Building's gleaming spire, bore the stamp of Bethlehem Steel. During World War I, when America's industrial might became crucial to Allied victory, Schwab's organizational genius reached its apex. President Wilson himself called upon him to accelerate shipbuilding efforts. The results were spectacular. American shipyards, under Schwab's direction, produced vessels at rates that seemed to defy physical possibility. His empire expanded beyond steel into mining, manufacturing, and real estate. Financial titans like J.P. Morgan counted him as an equal. Political leaders sought his counsel. He moved through the highest circles of global power with the same ease he had once shown in Loretto's grocery store. Yet at the very peak of his success, as Bethlehem Steel's furnaces roared and his personal fortune seemed limitless, destiny was preparing a cruel reversal. In the glittering New York of the 1920s, while jazz bands played and champagne flowed, the first tremors of Charles Schwab's downfall were already rumbling beneath the surface of his seemingly impregnable empire. The market speculation that had once seemed to turn everything he touched to gold began to betray him, each loss driving him to chase ever riskier ventures. Even before Black Tuesday cast its shadow across America, the man who had risen from the Pennsylvania mountains was discovering that financial gravity spares no one, not even industrial titans. The Great Depression struck with the force of a blast furnace explosion. Bethlehem Steel stock certificates, once worth $200 per share and proudly displayed in oak-paneled boardrooms, now traded for less than the price of a workman's lunch. The numbers told a story of almost mythological destruction, billions in value vanishing like morning mist, personal guarantees on company loans becoming millstones around their guarantor's neck. Each day's financial pages wrote another chapter in the dismantling of a legend. The Riverside Mansion, that monument to Gilded Age excess that had hosted princes and presidents, stood as a silent witness to its owner's reversal of fortune. Unable to meet even basic property taxes, Schwab watched as his greatest symbol of success slipped through his fingers. The estate's foreclosure proceedings drew crowds of onlookers, some perhaps remembering nights when they had danced beneath its crystal chandeliers. His beloved yacht, once the toast of Monte Carlo, was sold for a fraction of its worth. The art collection that had made critics swoon was dispersed to satisfy creditors. The transformation was brutal in its totality. The man who had once calculated complex steel production figures in his head now struggled to balance his checkbook. From his new home, a modest apartment that would once have housed one of his middle managers, he borrowed money from increasingly reluctant friends. His famous smile, once capable of charming millions from the most hardened bankers, grew strained, then rare, then vanished altogether. Health failed as fortune fled. The robust figure who had strode through mill yards, memorizing workers' names and personal stories, became stooped, hesitant. His legendary optimism, which had helped build skyscrapers and launch ships, finally buckled under the accumulated weight of disaster. Even Bethlehem Steel, the company he had transformed from a struggling operation into an industrial colossus, slipped from his grasp, though its furnaces continued to burn. When death came in 1939, it found Charles Schwab in circumstances that would have seemed impossible during his glory days. The final accounting showed debts of $340,000, a number that would have seemed like pocket change to the man who had once commanded the equivalent of billions. The obituaries struggled to reconcile the industrial genius who had shaped America's skyline with the broken figure who had died practically penniless. But perhaps the most profound irony lay in what remained of the Schwab legacy. Here was a man who had revolutionized building construction, whose steel had made possible the very shape of modern America, yet he died without enough money to pay for his own funeral. The decline was so complete that even the mountains of Loretto, where his extraordinary journey had begun, seemed to cast longer shadows over his memory. Yet as the 1940s dawned and America stood on the brink of another great transformation, questions remained about the true nature of Charles Schwab's legacy. In the spring of 1946, as America emerged triumphant from World War II, Emma Urania Dinky Schwab died in relative obscurity, closing the final chapter of the Schwab dynasty. She had outlived her husband by 7 years, inhabiting a world that had forgotten the days when the Schwab name opened every door in New York. Their marriage, childless through the decades, left no direct heir to carry forward either the family name or its legacy. The final accounting of the Schwab estate stood as stark testimony to the completeness of the dynasty's collapse. Creditors picked through the remaining assets like scavengers after a storm, finding little of value that hadn't already been claimed. Even personal items, once treasured for their memories rather than their worth, went to auction. The man who had built billion-dollar corporations left behind a legacy of debt and disappointment. Bethlehem Steel survived its founder's passing, but never recaptured its former glory. Through the latter half of the 20th century, the company that had once revolutionized American construction gradually faded, finally surrendering to bankruptcy in 2001. The furnaces that had forged the steel for America's greatest buildings fell silent in 2003, marking the end of an industrial era that Schwab himself had helped create. In Loretto, where the Schwab story began, preservation of his memory fell to historical societies rather than descendants. The grounds of Immergrün, once manicured to rival European palaces, slowly surrendered to nature's advance. Modern-day members of the extended Schwab family live unremarkable lives, their connection to the steel titan existing primarily in genealogical records and family stories. Yet Schwab's influence persists in unexpected ways. The educational institutions he supported continue their missions, perhaps his most sustainable legacy. Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, transformed its industrial ruins into symbols of renewal, proving that even in decline, Schwab's vision could inspire innovation. The steel-framed skyscrapers he helped make possible still pierce the clouds above American cities, silent monuments to his technical genius. Time has rendered a complex verdict on Charles Schwab's legacy. Modern observers see in his story cautionary lessons about hubris and the ephemeral nature of wealth. His management innovations, the emphasis on worker welfare and the belief in positive reinforcement, have become standard practice in modern industry. The very volatility of his fortune offers warnings to contemporary titans of industry who might believe their own success unassailable. In the end, the most profound aspect of Schwab's legacy may lie not in what he built or lost, but in what his story reveals about the American experience itself. Here was a man who embodied both the promise and peril of the American dream, the rapid rise from poverty to unimaginable wealth, the innovative spirit that transformed an industry, and the hubris that eventually brought it all crashing down. The steel that bore his company's name still stands in bridges and buildings across America, even as the fortune that built them vanished like morning fog. Perhaps that is Charles Schwab's true legacy. Not the millions made and lost, but the physical transformation of America itself. A transformation that, for better or worse, helped shape the nation we inhabit today. In the shadows of American wealth, where true power moves in whispers, one old money family has indeed perfected the art of invisible empire. And while the Rockefellers built museums and the Vanderbilts erected palaces, this enigmatic clan quietly amassed a $200 billion fortress of influence that reaches from Manhattan's most coveted real estate to Palm Beach's exclusive shores. Yet, their true masterpiece isn't measured in billions. It's written in shadows. And through 5 generations, they've orchestrated a symphony of wealth and power so discreet that even America's elite rarely grasp the full scope of their influence. Thus, in today's episode, for the first time, the curtain pulls back on one of the nation's most secretly sophisticated dynasties, as we describe the Phipps family, the Gilded Age dynasty that still runs America. Meet the modern Phipps family, the most fascinating billionaire clan you've likely never encountered. And going back all the way to the Gilded Age, while those showy Schwabs and flamboyant Vanderbilts practically begged for the spotlight, these masterful puppeteers of American wealth have perfected the art of being fabulously rich in pristine privacy. Remarkably, their crown jewel, Bessemer Trust, quietly manages a staggering $200 billion for the world's most elite clientele to this very day. It's an impressive feat, reflective of a legacy built on discretion and power, but that's merely scratching the surface of their breathtaking empire. From Palm Beach's most sumptuous estates to Manhattan's crown jewels of real estate, the Phipps portfolio reads like a monopoly board for the obscenely wealthy. These masters of discretion do permit themselves one public indulgence: the sport of kings. Their thoroughbred racing operation has produced a steady stream of Kentucky Derby champions, though you won't catch them making a spectacle at the winner's circle. Rather sporting of them, really. The current crop of Phipps heirs glides through society's upper stratosphere like invisible conductors, orchestrating massive charitable foundations and wielding considerable political influence without so much as a ripple in the public consciousness. Quite the clever strategy. Their network stretches through the most prestigious boardrooms and exclusive clubs in America, while strategic marriages and business alliances have cemented their position among the nation's most powerful families. In an age where every social media influencer screams for attention, the Phipps dynasty has achieved something rather extraordinary, expanding their empire while maintaining their cherished privacy. Their web of influence spans from Wall Street's most hallowed halls to Palm Beach's most exclusive clubs, their power networks extending deep into America's most influential institutions. Their approach to charitable giving is nothing short of masterful, marked by precision and an undeniable brilliance that amplifies their influence. None of that garish naming of museums or libraries. These masters of discretion prefer their philanthropy served with a hefty dose of anonymity. Their foundations shape everything from educational institutions to healthcare initiatives, yet the public remains blissfully unaware of the name behind these generous contributions. The modern Phipps dynasty continues to expand their influence while maintaining an almost supernatural ability to stay out of the public eye. Quite the feat in our age of relentless transparency. Through their strategic business dealings, carefully cultivated social connections, and precisely targeted philanthropy, they've created a legacy that would make their English ancestors quite proud indeed. Speaking of those ancestors, to truly grasp how this remarkable family achieved such monumental success while remaining virtually unknown, one must venture back to their modest English roots. Now there's a story worth telling. The bitter winter winds that swept through England's working-class districts in 1845 carried with them the sounds of industrial change, the clanking of new machinery, the hiss of steam engines, the rhythmic pounding of hammers against leather in countless cobbler shops. In one such shop, Henry Phipps Sr., his shoulders hunched over a worn workbench, made a decision that would alter the course of American industrial history. The shoemaker's calloused hands, stained with the oils and waxes of his trade, had grown weary of crafting footwear for others, while his own family's future remained uncertain. Each evening, as he walked the muddy streets of his working-class neighborhood, Phipps Sr. would see the same resignation in the eyes of his fellow tradesmen, men who had accepted their station in life. But he refused to accept such a fate for his young son, Henry Jr. The journey across the Atlantic tested the family's resolve. The cramped steerage compartment, filled with the stench of seasickness and unwashed bodies, became their home for 32 days. Young Henry Jr., barely old enough to understand the magnitude of their voyage, would later recall the constant pitch and roll of the ship, the salt spray that found its way through every crack, the meager rations that never quite filled their hungry bellies. Philadelphia received them with characteristic indifference. The city, already swollen with waves of immigrant arrivals, offered no special welcome to yet another family seeking refuge in the promise of America. The elder Phipps set up his cobbler's bench in a small shop off South Street, where the constant flow of working men's boots provided steady, if modest, income. But it was Pittsburgh, that smoke-blackened crucible of American industry, that would forge the family's destiny. The city in the 1850s was raw, untamed and primitive in its industrial might. The rivers that converged at its heart carried more than just coal and iron ore. They carried the ambitions of countless men seeking to transform America's industrial frontier. In Allegheny City, a working-class district north of Pittsburgh's center, young Henry Jr. found himself walking the same muddy streets as another immigrant son, Andrew Carnegie. Their first meeting occurred in circumstances so ordinary that neither boy could have imagined its significance. A chance encounter in a messenger's office where both worked as telegraph boys. The two young men recognized in each other a shared hunger, not just for escape from poverty, but for mastery over their circumstances. While Carnegie possessed a natural showmanship that would later define his public persona, young Phipps developed a different quality, the ability to observe, calculate and act with precision while remaining in the shadows. These early years laid the foundation for what would become a remarkable partnership. But more importantly, they instilled in Henry Phipps Jr. the traits that would define generations of his descendants: patience, discretion, and an uncanny ability to recognize opportunity in the darkest of circumstances. The dynasty that would emerge from these humble beginnings would reshape American finance in ways that the young cobbler's son could never have imagined. "Steel is the foundation of civilization," Andrew Carnegie once declared. But it was the partnership between Carnegie and Henry Phipps Jr. that would transform this prophetic statement into an industrial empire. Inside the Carnegie steel offices of 1875, while others marveled at the spectacular display of Bessemer converters illuminating Pittsburgh's night sky, Phipps hunched over his desk, meticulously examining columns of numbers. His innovation, what would become known as the Pittsburgh system of cost accounting, wasn't glamorous. But in those carefully tracked pennies per ton of steel lay the foundation of an industrial revolution. The ledgers spread before him told stories that others couldn't read. The exact cost of each ingot, every pound of coal, each man's labor. Through these numbers, Phipps orchestrated a transformation in industrial efficiency that reshaped American manufacturing. While other steel manufacturers guessed at their costs, Carnegie Steel knew, down to the fraction of a cent. In the boardrooms where industrial titans gathered, Phipps moved with calculated precision. The acquisition of the Frick Coke Company in 1882 appeared, to outside observers, as merely another business transaction. But Phipps understood what others didn't. Control of the coke supply meant control of steel's future. The $200 million purchase price, an astronomical sum at the time, secured not just coal mines and coke ovens, but the ability to strangle competitors through control of essential raw materials. When the Duquesne Steel Works fell into financial distress in 1890, Phipps recognized an opportunity that others missed. The acquisition eliminated a major competitor while simultaneously expanding Carnegie Steel's capacity. It was a chess master's move, positioning pieces for a game few others could even see. During the Homestead Strike of 1892, while Carnegie retreated to his Scottish castle, Phipps demonstrated a different kind of strategy. He remained in Pittsburgh but invisible, allowing Henry Clay Frick to become the public face of the conflict. No newspaper photographs captured Phipps entering or leaving the company offices. No reporters quoted his opinions. Yet his influence shaped every major decision, as demonstrated by the detailed correspondence preserved in company archives. The Panic of 1893 revealed the full extent of Phipps's strategic genius. As banks failed and competitors crumbled, Carnegie Steel not only survived, but expanded. These carefully cultivated relationships with figures like J.P. Morgan proved invaluable when credit froze across America. By 1900, as rumors of a possible sale to J.P. Morgan began to circulate, Phipps prepared for a transformation that would reshape American finance. In J.P. Morgan's Baroque study at 219 Madison Avenue, on a winter morning in 1901, Henry Phipps Jr. sat before an ornate mahogany desk, preparing to sign documents that would transform steel into dynasty. Morgan's purchase of Carnegie Steel for $480 million, a sum so vast it exceeded the entire United States federal budget of 1901, would leave Phipps with $50 million. But unlike others who had suddenly acquired such astronomical wealth, Phipps saw beyond mere fortune to something far more enduring. The establishment of Bessemer Trust in 1907 revealed the depth of his vision. Named after the steel-making process that had built their initial fortune, the trust began with $25 million in capital. While other industrialists' family offices focused on preservation, Bessemer Trust operated like a military campaign, methodically identifying opportunities across the American landscape with surgical precision. Between 1902 and 1911, as other magnates built ostentatious mansions and competed for social prominence in Newport and Fifth Avenue, Phipps orchestrated a different kind of expansion. His family quietly accumulated over 60 prime Manhattan properties. The strategy was remarkable in its simplicity. Buy where others weren't looking, hold where others might sell. In Palm Beach, they acquired vast tracts of land for mere dollars per acre, parcels that decades later would command millions per square foot. The family's philanthropic endeavors revealed this same calculating brilliance. The Phipps Institute, established at the University of Pennsylvania in 1905 with a $1.5 million grant, wasn't merely charity. It represented a strategic investment in medical research that would advance public health while cementing the family's influence in academic circles. The Phipps Houses program, creating over 6,000 affordable housing units across New York City, demonstrated an understanding of how private wealth could address public needs while generating both goodwill and sustainable returns. But Henry Phipps Jr.'s most brilliant maneuver lay in how he structured the family's future. The network of trusts he created protected wealth not just from taxation and fragmentation, but institutionalized the family's approach to money and influence. The Phipps Family Constitution of 1915 established governance principles that would become a blueprint for dynastic wealth preservation. Its requirement that young family members work outside the family business for 5 years before assuming management roles revealed a profound understanding of how to maintain institutional vitality across generations. As the 1920s approached, what emerged wasn't just another wealthy family, but an institution engineered for perpetual influence. The transformation from industrial magnates to sophisticated financial architects was complete, but it was merely the foundation of what would become an even more remarkable story of sustained dynasties across the American century. Few could have predicted that this quiet metamorphosis, orchestrated in the shadows of America's Gilded Age, would create an institution that would shape American finance for generations to come. In the rarefied atmosphere of America's dynastic wealth, where fortunes dissolve as easily as morning mist, one family has mastered an art few others have even begun to comprehend: the science of generational perpetuity. The Phipps legacy stands not merely as a monument to accumulated wealth, but as an intricate mechanism of survival, precision-engineered across decades. Within the limestone walls of Bessemer Trust's headquarters, this machinery operates with quiet efficiency. The institution, built upon Henry Phipps Jr.'s conservative principles more than a century ago, has evolved into a financial fortress, managing billions for the world's elite families. Yet beneath its modern exterior lies an unchanged foundation, the philosophical bedrock laid down by its founder. The family's genius reveals itself in their capacity for strategic adaptation. While other dynasties cling rigidly to their origins, each Phipps generation has executed a careful dance between preservation and expansion. Their thoroughbred racing operations still dominate Kentucky's bluegrass country. Their Manhattan real estate holdings have multiplied exponentially in value, and their private investments now reach into realms their ancestors could scarcely have imagined. Artificial intelligence, biotechnology, quantum computing. Most remarkable is their system for perpetuating this success. Young family members undergo what internal documents call the preparation, a rigorous process combining elite education with carefully orchestrated practical experience. Within private family offices, next to portraits of Henry Phipps Jr., future leaders learn not just financial management, but the subtle arts of invisible influence that have become the family's hallmark. The modern Phipps operation demonstrates how old wealth maintains its grip in a new century. Their influence flows through Washington's corridors, regardless of which party holds sway. Their business networks extend across continents, and their social connections span generations. Yet they maintain their characteristic invisibility, a trait growing more valuable in an age of intense public scrutiny. Looking toward the horizon, the Phipps machinery shows no signs of slowing. Their measured embrace of emerging technologies and markets, combined with their foundational emphasis on privacy and strategic patience, suggests that their influence will persist well into the future. In an era where new fortunes flare and fade like fireworks, they have engineered something far more enduring. A legacy built not on the shifting sands of temporary success, but on the bedrock of generational continuity. If we were to ask you to name an old money American dynasty that still has power today, it's likely your mind would quickly jump to household names like Rockefeller, Morgan, or Carnegie. And indeed, who would blame you? Those iconic families have their legacy embossed in our very memories with towering skyscrapers like Rockefeller Center, legendary concert venues such as Carnegie Hall, and banking giants like J.P. Morgan Chase still in operation today. However, what if we were to tell you that there is one old money family still pulling the strings of global finance behind the curtain, who is many billions of dollars richer than any Rockefeller, Morgan, or Carnegie living today? Indeed, the Mellon family of Pennsylvania has not only been in power as long as any Gilded Age robber baron, but their living descendants have maintained more wealth than almost any old money family featured on this channel, boasting a staggering fortune currently estimated at an eye-watering $12 billion. Furthermore, Mellon family members have had their hands in every stratum of American influence. From their patriarch, whose decisions as U.S. Treasury Secretary led America to experience both the Roaring Twenties and the Great Depression, all the way to the current BNY Mellon Bank, donning the family's surname, which presides over literally trillions of dollars in assets to this very day. Most assuredly, the Mellon family has it all, from a matriarch who changed the face of American interior design with her many lavish homes and sumptuous estates, to a cryptocurrency whiz-kid who's been quietly counting billions as US government regulators scramble to decide how to handle crypto. In today's episode, we'll tell you this secret old money banking dynasty's full, unauthorized journey, revealing a legacy that has quietly shaped the very backbone of American wealth and influence, as we describe. The Mellons, the secret old money family, richer than the Rockefellers. Scratching near the top of the elite scoreboard of America's richest families, the Mellon family are a little mentioned, but a captivatingly formidable force. Think of them as a sleeper team in the Super Bowl of American old money affluence. And with a jaw-dropping $12 billion to their name, their bank account is as deep as it is old. And in this legendary luxury lineup, patriarch Christopher Mellon assumes the role of quarterback. Born on the 2nd of October 1957, Christopher's more than just a typical team captain. His career resembles a complex jigsaw puzzle, blending elements of high finance and secretive government roles with an unexpected twist. His involvement in UFO advocacy adds a layer of mystery. And the overall Mellon family tree, while not quite a household name like Rockefeller or Kennedy, is as intricately woven and powerful as a hidden masterpiece in an exclusive art gallery. Indeed, Christopher's lineage is a discreet yet powerful roll call of American industrial and banking leaders. At the root of this quietly influential family tree stands Thomas Mellon, the original architect of Mellon Bank, an institution that, like its founders, has played an incomparably important yet little-known role in shaping America's financial horizon. This legacy continues robustly with BNY Mellon, the evolutionary successor of Mellon Bank and the family's banking empire. Today, BNY Mellon stands as a titan in the financial world, showcasing its prowess with a remarkable 22% surge in net income and stewarding a staggering $46.9 trillion, yes, trillion with a T, in assets under custody. In short, that ranks the Mellon family's brainchild banking empire as the 13th largest bank in the United States, all while managing to be ranked among the world's most admired companies, according to Fortune magazine, in 2023. However, the Mellons, not content with banking alone, have played a game of twister with various industries. They struck black gold when they helped create Gulf Oil, which eventually became household name gas behemoth Chevron in the 1980s, and in the steel sector, they clanged swords with giants, backing Union Steel before it was scooped up by Andrew Carnegie and US Steel. But, as with any truly impressive old money dynasty, their empire didn't stop there. Their investment portfolio reads like an Oscar nominee list for America's most iconic companies, including Westinghouse Electric, Newsweek, and General Motors. But it's not all about the greenbacks. For decades, the Mellon family has also engaged in land conservation efforts. The Richard King Mellon Foundation has notably contributed over 100,000 acres to wildlife refugees. And in real estate, the Mellons are more than just casual players. From the 700-acre Virginia Mellon estate to Oak Spring Farms, a 4,000-acre expanse that was Bunny Mellon's personal Eden, they've got the Midas touch in property. And let's not overlook that 27-acre slice of Antiguan paradise, a real estate jewel in the Mellon crown. Additionally, in the political arena, family member Timothy Mellon doesn't just donate, he makes waves. His $5 million contributions to various political causes and an eye-watering $90 million to Republican campaigns since 2018 show he's not shy about backing his beliefs with his wallet. However, while it's easy to sit and bask in the shocking power, wealth and influence of this $12 billion old money leviathan known as the Mellon family, you'd be surprised to learn that they first got their start, like so many Americans, as immigrants to the country's shores centuries ago. Therefore, join us as we venture back in time to discover exactly how one Irish immigrant reached the land of the free and the home of the brave, to spawn what would become one of America's richest families of all time. The Mellons family's story begins in the 19th century, a time of significant migration, with the Mellons originating from Scotland and later settling in Tyrone, Ireland. The Gaelic origins of their surname, derived from Meal and Meallan, translated to attractive or little pleasant one, offer a glimpse into the family's heritage. You see, during this period, County Tyrone, located in the northern part of Ireland in the region of Ulster, was a key area for Scottish Protestant settlers. This migration was part of the Ulster Plantation, a process in which the British government settled Scots in Ireland to establish control over the rebellious Irish provinces. One Archibald Mellon, part of this Scottish Protestant group known as the Scotch-Irish, began the family's American story in 1816, with many Scotch-Irish, like the Mellons, emigrating to the United States during this time. First establishing themselves in Westmoreland County, Pennsylvania, the family's legacy would begin in earnest when, in 1818, Thomas Mellon, the future founder of Mellon Bank and first patriarch of the Mellon dynasty, entered the United States. Determined to rise above the constraints of his rural beginnings, Thomas Mellon's life was a journey of ambition and aspiration. He vividly recalls in his autobiography the moment at the age of 10 when he first glimpsed wealth and magnificence I had before no conception of. A revelation that came upon seeing the opulent estate of his future parents-in-law, Jacob Negley and Barbara Ann Negley. Then, inspired at 14 after reading the transformative stories of Benjamin Franklin's autobiography, Mellon resolved to leave farming behind. Pursuing higher education, he entered the University of Pittsburgh, then the Western University of Pennsylvania, in October 1834 and graduated in 1837. After dedicating 5 years and investing $500 in his education, Mellon turned to teaching classics briefly before successfully entering the legal profession. He then established his own law firm before subsequently being elected as a judge for the Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas. Thus, Thomas Mellon's legal acumen not only enhanced his personal wealth through astute investments in downtown real estate, but also positioned him as a reputable attorney for corporations. Indeed, Mellon's early legal successes were the bedrock of the family's financial empire. His investments in law and real estate were instrumental in the establishment of T. Mellon and Sons, a banking house that emerged as the region's largest by the end of the 19th century. Beyond real estate, Mellon also ventured into coal, forming a profitable alliance with James B. Corey, a significant figure in the Pittsburgh coal industry. This diversification into real estate and coal was pivotal in his wealth accumulation, and by 1869, Thomas Mellon had yet again pivoted from legal practice to concentrate on his investments. Therefore, his banking house, T. Mellon and Sons, had shrewdly laid the groundwork for what would later become the Mellon Financial Corporation. But Thomas Mellon's prolific ability to adapt and seize new opportunities was but a blip on the radar of what his descendants would be able to accomplish. And on a brisk spring day in March 1855, Thomas, his son, Andrew, would enter into the world to fulfill that destiny. Andrew William Mellon, affectionately known as A.W., was the sixth child born to Thomas and Sarah Jane Mellon, yet, tragically, only the fourth to survive past infancy. And from his earliest years, Andrew's life was deeply intertwined with that of his father. Distrustful of both private and public educational institutions, Thomas Mellon took it upon himself to construct a schoolhouse specifically for his children, appointing a private tutor to oversee their education. Thus, starting at age 5, Andrew was educated in this unique setting, and this tailor-made educational experience, combined with a front-row seat to his father's financial expertise, undoubtedly helped set the foundation for Andrew's future success in banking and finance. Now, the 1870s saw Andrew furthering his academic pursuits at his father's alma mater, Western University of Pennsylvania, now known as the University of Pittsburgh. However, in a twist of fate, Andrew departed without a degree, opting instead for the rich lessons of practical experience. Then, in 1873, at only 18 years of age, Andrew took a decisive step into the world of banking by joining his father's bank, T. Mellon and Sons. Despite his youth, he swiftly emerged as a key player, exhibiting a sharp acumen for banking and finance. And his formative years at the bank, including witnessing the economic maelstrom of the Panic of 1873, had undoubtedly sharpened his economic insight and banking strategy. But the year 1876 marked one of the most pivotal moments in Andrew's trajectory, as he was granted power of attorney to steer the bank's operations. With this power, over time, Andrew would develop what would be called the Mellon system of business. Indeed, this was more than a mere strategy. It became a comprehensive approach to creating a robust industrial empire. This Mellon system involved meticulously crafting a network of interconnected enterprises, each supporting and enhancing the others. For instance, their banking interests provided financial backing to their industrial ventures, such as the aluminum and oil industries, while their real estate investments offered physical and infrastructural support. Indeed, this visionary approach was instrumental in the formation of major corporations such as the Aluminum Company of America, Gulf Oil Corporation, and Union Steel, which eventually merged with United States Steel Corporation. Now, in the same year that Thomas Mellon gave his son Andrew the power of attorney over the bank, 1876, Thomas introduced his son to Henry Clay Frick, marking a significant collaboration in American industrial history. Frick, a key figure in the burgeoning steel industry, was establishing the Frick family empire, a monumental force in the industrialization of the United States. His involvement in the coke and steel industries, pivotal for the era's rapid industrial growth, made Frick an invaluable ally for the Mellons. And by 1887, Andrew's brother, Richard B. Mellon, had also joined as co-owner and vice president, further consolidating family control over the business. Now, during the 1880s, Andrew Mellon, in collaboration with Frick, took control of the Pittsburgh National Bank of Commerce. Indeed, this was a significant power play for the family, as national banks held the exclusive right to issue banknotes, a crucial financial tool for empires like the Mellons. Specifically, issuing banknotes allowed them direct influence over the money supply and credit availability, vital components in an era of rapid economic expansion and industrialization. Furthermore, despite the considerable asset transfer from Thomas to Andrew Mellon, their enterprises remained relatively small, leading to what we would call these days a lean startup configuration in the Mellon's empire. Therefore, though T. Mellon and Sons employed just 7 individuals in 1895, this small scale suggested a strategic choice, prioritizing meticulous control over rapid expansion, laying a solid foundation for future growth. However, Andrew Mellon's immense influence was, much like many family members, not limited to business acumen. Founded in 1913 by Andrew and his brother Richard B. Mellon, the Mellon Institute stood as a symbol of innovation in scientific research. You see, the Mellon brothers, beyond their roles as bankers and venture capitalists, were foresighted in understanding the synergy between new technologies and established industries, and thus their aspiration to establish a groundbreaking research center materialized in this institute. Now, during the same period, another educational giant was taking shape. The Carnegie Institute of Technology, inaugurated in 1900 by legendary industrialist and one-time richest person in the world, Andrew Carnegie, aimed to mirror the Scottish model of technical education, catering to the needs of an industrializing society. And this particular school, initially serving the educational requirements of working-class children, evolved into a vital center for practical education, later becoming the Carnegie Institute of Technology, or Carnegie Tech. The paths of these two institutions next converged in 1960, when discussions about a merger were initiated by family member Paul Mellon, representing the Mellon legacy. This historic amalgamation in 1967 led to the formation of Carnegie Mellon University, a fusion that was not just an institutional merger, but also a culmination of the Mellons' long-standing support, leading to the establishment of the Mellon College of Science and the College of Humanities and Social Sciences. In the 21st century, CMU is acclaimed for its educational excellence, recently ranked number 24 among national universities in the US News and World Report and 3rd for most innovative schools. Its international reputation is equally strong, with commendable top 30 positions in global rankings by Times Higher Education and QS World University Rankings. Thus, by the 1920s, Andrew W. Mellon's financial and culture stature had soared, making him one of America's wealthiest and influential individuals. However, in order to solidify his already prodigious financial influence, he would need to enter into a wholly different realm of power, politics. In 1921, a pivotal moment in American history unfolded as President Warren G. Harding appointed Andrew Mellon, an already legendary figure of significant wealth and influence, as the Secretary of the Treasury. This role, which Mellon held across a shocking 3 presidential administrations, catapulted him into the limelight of national affairs. Confronting a substantial federal debt, a byproduct of World War I expenditures, Mellon embarked on an ambitious strategy to reform taxation by using an, at the time, unconventional approach: lower tax rates to spur economic activity, thereby boosting tax revenue. Consequently, the Revenue Acts of 1921, 1924 and 1926 materialized Mellon's vision, resulting in a drastic reduction of the top marginal tax rate from 73% in 1922 to a mere 24% by 1929. This period witnessed the American economy's roaring ascension, marking the oft-called Roaring Twenties as an era of unprecedented growth and prosperity. However, Mellon's tenure was not without its challenges. With the onset of the Great Depression in 1929, his economic policies, once celebrated, now faced rigorous scrutiny. Critics emerged as the national debt escalated anew, and the 1930s marked another turbulent period for Andrew Mellon. With his reputation suffering following the Wall Street crash, he escaped the States to serve as ambassador to Great Britain in 1932 before returning to private business. His unwavering belief in minimal government intervention and the necessity of economic recessions to purge excesses became contentious topics during this era, and a debate that continues to this day. Meanwhile, the 1940s saw Richard King Mellon, Andrew's brother, additionally emerge as a key figure. A military man, Richard reactivated his service in 1942, overseeing Pennsylvania's Selective Service System and later joining the War Department in Washington, D.C. His contributions, which included establishing banks for the armed forces and promoting "This is the Army," earned him the Distinguished Service Medal, and post-war he continued his military involvement in the Army Reserves, ultimately attaining the rank of Lieutenant General. But beyond his military endeavours, Richard King Mellon assumed a prominent role in the Mellon dynasty, particularly following Andrew Mellon's passing in 1937. King, as he became known, eerily aligned with Robert De Niro's sinister real-life character in the recent Killers of the Flower Moon film, started at the bottom of the family bank in 1920, working as a messenger and assistant cashier, and later became its president in 1933. Richard King Mellon's post-war period was also characterized by his collaborative efforts with Pittsburgh Mayor David L. Lawrence. Together they tackled urban challenges like flooding, pollution, and blight, initiating large-scale redevelopment projects that redefined Pittsburgh. Indeed, Richard King Mellon's financial clout was instrumental in aligning these projects with new regulatory standards, reshaping the city's fabric. Additionally, Richard and his wife, Constance Prosser Mellon, adopted 4 children: Richard P. Mellon, Seward Prosser Mellon, Constance Barber Mellon, and Cassandra Mellon Milbury, all of whom continued to influence the region. Furthermore, in 1947, Richard's establishment of the Richard King Mellon Foundation marked one of the family's first significant forays into philanthropy. The foundation has awarded over 8,000 grants to more than 1,800 different organizations since its inception. However, it would be another family member, one Paul Mellon, who would live a life that would inextricably tie the name Mellon to philanthropy and art. Paul Mellon, that man who would turn the family name into a word synonymous with philanthropy and art, was born on the 11th of June 1907 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The son of Andrew W. Mellon, Paul grew up in an environment of affluence and opportunity, and his early education at the Choate School, a boarding school whose alumni list includes the likes of JFK himself, laid the foundation for Paul Mellon's academic pursuits. Thereafter, Mellon's thirst for knowledge took him to Yale University, where he earned an A.B. in 1929, followed by another degree from Cambridge University in the UK in 1931. However, in a departure from the expected career path in finance, Paul Mellon charted his own course. After briefly working at the family's legendary Mellon Bank, Paul realized his heart was set on art and culture. By 1936, Paul Mellon communicated this passion to his father, already a patron of the National Gallery of Art, and surprisingly gained his financier father's support. This led to the commencement of the gallery's construction in 1937, with Paul playing a critical role. Now, the 1950s saw Paul Mellon's unique leadership style come to the fore. Unlike his father, Andrew, known for his financial and political prowess, Paul focused on the arts, education, and the environment, supporting numerous institutions, including the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra and London's Tate Galleries, and becoming instrumental in creating the Bollingen Prize for Poetry. Furthermore, Rachel Bunny Mellon, Paul's wife, was no less influential in the cultural and artistic spheres. Born into wealth and marrying into it, Bunny was celebrated for her exquisite taste in art, design, and horticulture. For example, she famously redesigned the White House's Rose Garden at Jacqueline Kennedy's request, and also the East Garden. Her expertise in gardens was matched by her skill in interior design and art collection, working with notable decorators and amassing an impressive collection of art and porcelain. Indeed, Bunny's style was luxurious yet unassuming, reflecting her discerning eye for art, clothes, and interior design. Soon, she became an icon of mid-century style, not just through her personal choices, but through her contributions to the National Gallery of Art, where she and Paul donated over 1,000 European paintings. Furthermore, Bunny Mellon's iconic homes and gardens, spread across the United States, France, and the Caribbean, were well known as an embodiment of the Mellon family's luxurious yet unpretentious taste. Oak Spring Farm in Upperville, Virginia, a sprawling 4,000-acre property, stood out among her estates. Though the interiors of this residence, like many of her homes, remained largely private, they were reputed to be extraordinary, showcasing Mellon's confident and refined style. Another of Mellon's cherished properties was Scallop Path, a historic estate on Cape Cod. Acquired in the early 1970s, Mellon meticulously renovated the 1700s-era main house over several years, and the estate, spanning 7.5 acres and featuring a 7-bedroom main house, a guest house, and exquisitely designed gardens, was shaped by Mellon's creative vision. And in New York City, Mellon's flair for design was exemplified by her 11,000-square-foot, 14-room townhouse in the Upper East Side. This luxurious property, which later sold for $41 million, boasted a private garden and was a showcase of her impeccable taste. Simultaneously, by the 1970s, Paul Mellon had also made a significant mark in academia. His contributions and influence in this sphere highlighted the Mellons' expansive reach, extending beyond art and design to the educational realm. For example, he transformed the Paul Mellon Foundation into the Paul Mellon Centre for Studies in British Art under the Yale Centre for British Art, marking a new chapter in the study of British art and demonstrated Paul's prudent approach to philanthropy and intellectual pursuits. Therefore, together, Paul and Bunny Mellon left a legacy rich in cultural, educational and environmental contributions, each defining their era with a blend of discernment, generosity and a profound love for the arts. However, as the 21st century beckoned, the Mellons, ever the adapters, would be presented with a new set of challenges with the 2008 financial crisis looming, and a family member deciding to enter into the mysterious world of cryptocurrency. In the final decade of the 20th century, the Mellon family started to engage dynamically with the burgeoning tech industry, injecting substantial investments into technology ventures. Indeed, this pivot was a strategic response to the digital revolution sweeping the financial world. First, they renamed Mellon Bank to Mellon Financial Corporation, and then quickly adapted to globalization through the formation of BNY Mellon. This newly minted financial powerhouse, born from the merge of Mellon Family's bank and the Bank of New York, boasted trillions in assets under management and operations across 35 countries by 2023. And among the recent, more trailblazing torchbearers of the family's dynasty, Matthew Taylor Mellon II and Timothy Mellon stand out, each charting distinct courses while upholding the family's legacy. Matthew Taylor Mellon II, a direct descendant of both the founder of Mellon Bank, Judge Thomas Mellon, and the founder of Drexel University, Anthony Joseph Drexel, carved out a niche for himself as a billionaire businessman and entrepreneur. You see, Matthew first made his mark in the fashion industry in 1999, marrying Tamara Mellon, the co-founder of Jimmy Choo. At Jimmy Choo, he was instrumental in developing a men's line, bringing a fresh perspective to the luxury shoe brand. His entrepreneurial journey further expanded in 2000 with the launch of Harry's of London, an innovative venture that blended athletic shoe technology with the traditional aesthetic of men's dress shoes. His fashion ventures continue to evolve with Hanley Mellon, a women's ready-to-wear line co-created with then-wife Nicole Hanley in 2014, reflecting their global travel inspirations. Even more unconventionally, Matthew's interests extended beyond fashion to the burgeoning world of cryptocurrencies. He invested $2 million in CoinApex, a startup incubator focused on Bitcoin-related businesses, demonstrating his interest in the digital currency space. And he played a pivotal role in the Chamber of Digital Commerce as its honorary executive committee chairman, advocating for digital currency advancement. His subsequent investments in cryptocurrency, particularly in Ripple, resulted in a fortune estimated in the billions, highlighting his acumen in identifying and capitalizing on nascent financial trends. And Timothy Mellon, another heir to the Mellon banking fortune, took an equally divergent path, making significant strides in the railroad industry. As the main financier of Guilford Transportation Industries, formed in 1977 and named after his hometown of Guilford, Connecticut, Timothy displayed a strategic approach to business growth. In the 80s, his acquisition strategy extended to purchasing rail lines from Maine to Maryland, marking his influence in the transportation sector. However, Timothy Mellon also engaged in political financing, albeit in a less publicized manner. Despite his reclusive nature and distance from active politics, he emerged as a significant contributor in the 2020 presidential election, donating $10 million to the America First Action Super PAC, aligned with Donald Trump. Thus, The Mellons, while pursuing diverse individual interests, have consistently emphasized having an impact that extends beyond their financial endeavors, with significant contributions to the arts, education, and conservation, thus shaping aspects of American cultural and social landscapes. In a dimly lit, hushed room swirling with cigar smoke, J.P. Morgan sat like a king on his throne, emanating an aura of unassailable power. Across from him, political candidate William McKinley's face was etched with lines of worry and exhaustion, visibly burdened by the sinking reality that his presidential dreams could soon disintegrate into dust. The year was 1896, and America stood at a political precipice. You see, McKinley's campaign was gasping for financial life, teetering on the edge of insolvency. Sensing the moment's gravity, Morgan unceremoniously produced a staggering check, instantly lifting the weight from McKinley's shoulders and infusing newfound hope into his weary eyes. With that monumental financial lifeline, Morgan didn't just rescue McKinley's campaign, he essentially bought himself a president. Indeed, the sheer audacity of the act is mind-boggling. Imagine a single private citizen with the clout and resources to effectively install a US president, forever cementing his influence into the core of the American establishment. However, in some ways, Morgan wasn't an anomaly, but rather the crowning jewel, in a lineage whose name has become an awe-inspiring symbol of American affluence and dominion. For over 2 centuries, the Morgans have stood as larger-than-life figures, their reach extending from early merchant endeavors to contemporary financial juggernauts like J.P. Morgan Chase, Morgan Stanley, and Morgan Grenfell. Without a doubt, this old money family hasn't just participated in the creation of modern America, they are some of its primary architects and patrons. In today's video at Old Money Luxury, join us as we retell the entire family saga from their maritime merchant ancestors through J.P. Morgan, the man who essentially invented American finance as we know it, all the way to recent members you can find on social media with parents on reality television. It's quite the story, we'll tell you. With that said, let us begin. From their initial voyage across the storm-tossed Atlantic in 1636, the Morgan family have established themselves as integral elements in the American narrative from the very beginning. Departing the 17th century Welsh countryside, they sought the verdant possibilities of the then Massachusetts Bay Colony, guided by an intoxicating blend of zeal and the quest for an unblemished life. Their ancestor, Miles Morgan, initially settled in Roxbury, Massachusetts, before recognizing the greater opportunities that Springfield presented. At the time, he took on various roles: warrior, farmer, and revered community figure, and attempt to provide pivotal contributions to a colonial society in its infancy. Given such a backdrop as having ancestors here longer than the country has been in existence, sometimes called having American founding stock lineage, it is likely that the Morgans do not see themselves as mere citizens, but as a seminal part of the American founding pedigree. Over decades, this self-perception probably kindles both an exalted pride and a ceaseless ambition, with each successive generation perceiving itself as the custodian of an ancestry that had its roots in the earliest colonial vessels. This sense of duty has thus served as an impassioned catalyst for their various exploits, be it military service, commercial ventures, or their conspicuous role in the social strata. Therefore, as history's pages continued to unfurl, the Morgans continued to evolve from local merchants to dynamic participants in America's fight for independence and economic self-sufficiency. A quintessential portrait of this evolution is Joseph Morgan, Jr., the illustrious great-grandson of Miles Morgan. Holding the rank of captain in the Massachusetts militia, Joseph was therefore an active participant in the drama of the American Revolutionary War, not merely an observer. Post-war, Joseph ventured into the bustling commercial sphere of Connecticut. There, he operated a diverse array of enterprises, a tavern, coffeehouse, and stagecoach line, before co-founding the Aetna Fire Insurance Company in 1819. Indeed, this endeavor has a legacy that reverberates even today. Aetna has evolved into a colossal entity, its roots deeply embedded in the soil of American business history. In 1835, Aetna, under Joseph's direction, experienced a windfall, covering the damages sustained by Wall Street firms during the Great Fire of New York. The decisive moment arrived when Joseph purchased the stakes of hesitant Aetna investors, promptly dispersing insurance payouts to the beleaguered banks. This swift action cemented Aetna's reputation on Wall Street and catapulted its premiums in subsequent years. Therefore, Joseph's commercial triumphs represent a pivotal moment in Morgan history. He was the first family member to be intricately involved with a corporate titan that continues to exert considerable influence today. To put this into a bird's-eye view perspective, the Morgans have thus been business pioneers longer than the United States has even been a country. Now, paving the way for future generations, Joseph would sire a son, Junius Spencer Morgan, destined to become another influential family figure on the global financial stage. Born in Holyoke, Massachusetts in 1813 to Joseph and Sarah Morgan, as was common for entrepreneurial young men of the time, Junius skipped the hallowed halls of university. Instead, at the age of 16, he apprenticed himself to Alfred Wells, a Boston merchant banker. For the next 5 years, Junius gained invaluable experience in the mercantile and banking spheres, absorbing the intricacies of the financial sector in both Boston and New York. You see, Junius was initially drawn to the sphere of business out of a keen sense for opportunity and an innate knack for numbers, more than a little influenced by the American ethos that equated financial success with virtue. Yet for all his prowess, Junius faced numerous challenges. His ventures, notably in the formation of J.S. Morgan and Company, were examined through the lens of ethical inquiry. Critiques often emerged about the firm's investments in enterprises of a morally ambiguous nature, industries built on the backs of underpaid labor, and deals that perpetuated social inequality. Though Junius's financial mastery was beyond reproach, it existed in a delicate interplay with ethical questions that resisted facile resolutions. In 1854, he subsequently embarked on a transformative chapter, uprooting himself to London, a calculated move underpinned by a melange of ambition and practicality. At that time, London was the pulsating heart of global finance and trade, providing Junius a grander stage to magnify his undertakings. In this teeming metropolis, he confronted an intricate tapestry of challenges. For example, America's burgeoning economic protectionism at the time often clashed with Britain's entrenched advocacy for free trade. On the flip side, Britain kept a vigilant eye on the fledgling United States, concerned that its global supremacy could be threatened by American ascendancy. Junius became the dynamic head of the firm in 1859, while Peabody remained the symbolic senior partner. He then inserted himself into London's high society, hosting opulent gatherings at his residences near Hyde Park and in Roehampton. And although Junius's Peabody and Company had considerable involvement in the transatlantic cotton trade, their core business lay in relationships with Eastern U.S. banks and railroad companies. This strategic alignment allowed them to remain somewhat insulated from the direct implications of American slavery, a contentious issue that gripped many London-based banks at the time. Therefore, during the tumultuous years of the American Civil War, Junius aligned his interests with the Union. The firm capitalized on this allegiance, trading Union war bonds to astonishing profits. Thus, nestled amidst these geopolitical tectonics and economic dissonances, Junius evolved into an invaluable liaison between American magnates and their European counterparts. He found himself enmeshed in the complex interplay of British-American trade negotiations and international diplomacy. But as Junius and his associates deftly navigated the intricacies of international finance through J.S. Morgan and Company, they could scarcely have foreseen that the legacy they were building would not merely endure, but would be monumentally amplified by the next generation, through his son. Born in 1837, John Pierpont Morgan's path to financial eminence appeared practically preordained. Under the rigorous guidance of his aforementioned father, Junius Spencer Morgan, his upbringing was a fusion of privilege, deliberate strategizing, and a unique set of hardships. You see, Junius was unrelenting in his expectations, pushing his son to excel in every aspect of life. This demanding upbringing had its own difficulties, as John Pierpont was burdened not only by his father's monumental pressures to succeed, but also by a recurrent skin ailment, rosacea, which would accompany J.P. Morgan throughout his life. Furthermore, this facial condition not only scarred him physically, but also influenced how he presented himself to the world. Because of his skin issues, Morgan was selective about how he was photographed, often favoring profiles that lessened the visual impact of his facial challenges. Yet what many perceived as a facial anomaly became, in some ways, an asset in a ruthless business world. His imposing countenance, partly a result of his skin condition, became legendary for intimidating competitors and associates alike. It was as if his visage mirrored the formidable, unyielding nature of his character. Now, to mold his son into a refined, cosmopolitan individual, Junius sent young Morgan to a medley of educational institutions. From the Episcopal Academy in Connecticut to the University of Göttingen in Germany, Morgan's educational journey was as broad as it was elite. This eclectic upbringing served as the cornerstone for a life destined to leave an unforgettable mark on the American business landscape, framing not only his capabilities in finance, but also his nuanced understanding of art, languages, and the complexities of human life. However, J.P. Morgan's early career wasn't without controversy, particularly during the Civil War years. Viewing the war itself not as a calamity, but as a lucrative venture, Morgan dabbled in the morally murky waters of war profiteering. One episode that particularly stands out as emblematic of Morgan's contentious actions is the infamous Hall Carbine affair. In this venture, Morgan financed the acquisition of 5,000 surplus rifles, each costing a mere $3.50. These firearms were subsequently sold to Union forces at a hefty profit, illustrating his willingness to capitalize on the nation's fractured state. Such maneuvers would cast a long shadow over his illustrious career, sculpting the narrative that painted him as a cold-hearted capitalist ready to profit from a nation torn asunder. Additionally, another noteworthy episode during the war occurred when J.P. Morgan's father received the crucial news of the fall of Vicksburg, before it was common knowledge in London's financial circles. Utilizing telegraph communications with his son John Pierpont in New York, Junius Spencer was alerted to this pivotal event in the American Civil War ahead of his competitors. Armed with this advance intelligence, the Morgans astutely seized the opportunity to buy up Union war bonds before their prices soared with the newfound optimism for the Union cause. This prescient move not only swelled their coffers, but also showcased the Morgan family's uncanny knack for exploiting real-time information, further consolidating their commanding presence in the intricate theater of finance. Such episodes, marred by ethical dilemmas yet undeniably shaping his path, contributed to the complex legacy that the early Morgans would leave behind. They reveal a group not just of immense influence and financial acumen, but also ones who tread the blurry line between opportunism and the darker facets of capitalism. Now, in 1871, J.P. Morgan's career took a monumental turn with the formation of Drexel, Morgan & Company, a venture with Philadelphia financier Anthony Joseph Drexel. Operating as an agent for European investments in the United States, the company played a pivotal role in reshaping the American economy, which until then had a robust market mainly for railroads and canals. To be clear, Drexel, Morgan & Company wasn't just successful, it was transformative, and it revitalized the American securities market and expanded the national capital market. But the company faced its fair share of controversies, often labeled as a symbol of greed and unchecked corporate power. However, at the dawn of the 20th century, John Pierpont Morgan found himself on the cusp of orchestrating what would become his financial masterstroke. Driven by an unquenchable thirst for consolidation and a vision of a streamlined, globally competitive American steel industry, Morgan aimed to achieve what no one before him had dared: the formation of the world's first billion-dollar corporation. The audacious venture took form as U.S. Steel, a behemoth birthed from the amalgamation of Federal Steel Company and Andrew Carnegie's Steel Leviathan. Morgan's strategic calculations were astute. By creating U.S. Steel, he sought to capture untapped economies of scale, thereby bolstering the competitiveness of American steel on the global stage. Indeed, the maneuvers he employed to pull this off were as complex as they were daring. Through skillful negotiations, a knack for understanding corporate value, and an unparalleled network of contacts, Morgan managed to convince key stakeholders that consolidation was the path to future profit and national prominence. Yet this monumental accomplishment did not escape scrutiny. Critics were quick to denounce U.S. Steel as a monopoly, a dominating force that not only sought to control steel production, but also aspired to wield undue influence over affiliated industries. Such aggressive labor policies and a voracious appetite for control fanned the flames of public debate. The controversy that enveloped U.S. Steel would echo in the chambers of policymakers, playing a significant role in shaping antitrust laws and labor rights for years to follow. Indeed, even as his titanic achievement with US Steel stirred turbulent waters of public discourse and legislative apprehension, J.P. Morgan managed to sail relatively unscathed. His cultivated social prominence and intricate web of influential connections, interwoven with a nuanced understanding of legal boundaries, afforded him a buffer from the severest of societal and legal reprisals. However, after the monumental creation of US Steel, Morgan would not rest on his laurels. He subsequently continued to be a dominant force in American finance, playing critical roles in stabilizing the US economy during periods of financial panic. Notably, his intervention in the Panic of 1907 showcased his immense influence, as he personally orchestrated a bailout of sorts, convening with other titans of industry to prevent a broader economic collapse. Additionally, as a patron of the arts, he amassed an extensive collection, including rare books and manuscripts, further etching his influence on American culture. But as time wore on, Morgan began to prepare for the inevitable passing of the torch. Though he would never completely step away from the empire he had built, he started laying the groundwork for the next generation. His son, J.P. Morgan Jr., would therefore inherit not just a business but an entire ethos, a philosophy of financial influence, social prominence, and yes, the intricate dance with public scrutiny and legislative oversight. Now, each successive generation of Morgans made its own unique contributions to the family legacy. Born as the heir apparent, the aforementioned John Pierpont Morgan Jr., commonly known as Jack, attended prestigious institutions like St. Paul's School and Harvard College, before following in his father's footsteps in both finance and philanthropy. Later, Jack's high-stakes involvement in World War I would display an uncanny resemblance to his father's actions during the American Civil War. As his firm became the sole supplier of munitions for the Allies, he facilitated massive loans and supply agreements with the British and French governments, earning a staggering 1% commission on $3 billion. While these transactions significantly funded the war effort and brought him enormous prestige, they also attracted criticism. He was accused of influencing American foreign policy for personal gain. Specifically, allegations suggested he pushed the US closer to joining the war to safeguard his extensive investments. Therefore, this duality of financial success, marred by ethical questioning, echoed his father's controversial business choices during the Civil War. Both men leveraged national conflict as a springboard for immense profit, and both faced public scrutiny for their willingness to capitalize on such grim circumstances. Furthermore, the Morgans were seminal in the founding of America's central bank, the Federal Reserve System, in 1913. After the aforementioned Panic of 1907 revealed the fragility of the US financial system, J.P. Morgan Sr. played a key role in conceptualizing a centralized banking structure. The family's influence therefore pervaded the Federal Reserve's architecture, triggering debate over the extent to which private banking interests had molded public policy. Soon thereafter, the Great Depression wreaked havoc on John Pierpont Morgan Jr.'s financial empire, causing his assets to sharply decline from a staggering $704 million to a lesser $425 million. Adding fuel to the fire was the Senate's Pecora hearings in 1932, which served as a catalyst for public animosity against Wall Street titans, with Morgan Jr. becoming a symbol of a flawed and failing financial system. These hearings thereby crystallized the public's image of Morgan Jr. as someone who opportunistically profited during periods of economic hardship, further intensifying the scrutiny his family had long been under. Additionally, amidst this turbulent backdrop, Morgan Stanley was founded in 1935, conceived as a direct response to the Glass-Steagall Act, which mandated the separation of commercial and investment banking activities. The company was meant to carry on the Morgan family's investment banking operations. Specifically, Henry Sturgis Morgan, a grandson of J.P. Morgan, was among its co-founders. The inception of Morgan Stanley thus served a dual purpose. It not only complied with new federal regulations, but also provided a pathway for the Morgan legacy to adapt and persist in a drastically altered financial landscape. Therefore, the Morgan legacy wouldn't end with Jr., it would continue with his grandchildren, J.P. Morgan III and Henry Sturgis Morgan. United in their business acumen, they additionally fused two banking powerhouses, Morgan Guaranty Trust Company of New York and J.P. Morgan and Company, to birth Morgan Guaranty Trust, which swiftly ascended the ranks to become a dominant global financial institution. This institution found itself in a complex geopolitical web during the Cold War era. As Morgan Guaranty Trust was intricately tied to significant corporations, both within the United States and globally, it couldn't escape scrutiny. Questions over the bank's vast influence and the ethical considerations surrounding its global footprint became subjects of intense discussion. Rolling into the 1980s, the Morgan lineage widened its financial focus by venturing into diverse investment channels. Alongside, they amplified their charitable work through ventures like the Morgan Family Fund and the Morgan Library and Museum. These altruistic efforts could not fully silence lingering questions about the source of their colossal wealth, a scrutiny intensified by the family's by then 100-year involvement in wartime profiteering and strategic corporate maneuvering. Now, the turn of the millennium saw another milestone when J.P. Morgan and Company united with Chase Manhattan Corporation. This merger created a financial juggernaut, raising eyebrows around antitrust issues. Nevertheless, such concerns were eventually sidelined, allowing this new entity to consolidate its formidable status in global banking. As of the last few years, the Morgan family remains firmly rooted in the echelons of old money, albeit in a somewhat unexpected manner, and not always in a quiet wealth kind of fashion. One example includes John Adams Morgan, who tied the knot with fashion designer and reality TV star Sonia Morgan in 1998. They have a daughter, Quincy Adams Morgan, who has mostly been kept away from the public eye. However, pictures of her are easily found on social media. Quincy recently graduated summa cum laude from the University of Pennsylvania in 2023, before moving to Los Angeles to ostensibly find a new path. Simultaneously, keeping to the old money principle of intermarriage between noble families, there is actually an entire segment of the Morgan dynasty who are members of the British aristocracy. You see, Mary Lyman Morgan Burns, a sister of J.P. Morgan, had a daughter, Mary Ethel, who married into the illustrious Harcourt family by becoming Viscountess Harcourt in 1899. Indeed, the name Harcourt has been a fixture in British history, going as far back as the 1100s. Over the centuries, the Harcourt family has amassed considerable influence in various sectors, most notably in politics and diplomacy. Further cementing the Morgans' foray into British aristocracy, Cynthia Mary Burns, related to the family through Walter Spencer Morgan Burns, married Sir John Gawen Carew Pole, 12th Baronet, in 1928. The Pole baronetcy is additionally one of the oldest in England, with a lineage dating back to the early 1600s, with roots in both politics and military service. Therefore, the story of the Morgans is a fascinating odyssey, from humble maritime merchants to powerful financiers who shaped epochs, with tentacles reaching into the creation of America's financial infrastructure, intricate engagements in global conflicts, and connections to British aristocracy. Their influence is as complex as it is vast. And, as if to put a cherry on top, they've also become household names in the nation's most essential financial institutions. Thus, in many ways, the Morgans encapsulate the multifaceted dimensions of American financial and political history, embodying both the benefits and complications that come with immense power and wealth. Imagine you are a multi-billionaire tycoon in the twilight of your life, standing before the vast empire you've built from the ground up. As you decide where to leave your fortune, you look into the eyes of your heirs, trying to discern who among them you trust enough to handle your life's work. Indeed, it would be a moment of profound introspection and decision-making, echoing the choices faced by industrial robber barons of the past. And one such magnate, Henry Clay Frick, confronted this very dilemma. His legacy, however, took a turn that many might not anticipate. In the cutthroat world of the steel industry, Frick's business practices earned him infamy. Yet, perhaps as a counterbalance to his ruthless pursuits, he also became known for his lavish spending on art and cultural artifacts. Turning their backs on the race to accumulate more wealth, the Frick children found their callings as scientists, professors, and artists, quietly choosing to let the mighty $3 billion Frick family fortune dwindle away, setting the name apart from old money families whose wealth seems to grow by the minute, like the Rockefellers and Mellons. In today's episode, we dive into the lessons learned from the Frick family fortune, the complexities of inheritance, and the nuances of old money as we describe the Frick family. when a $3 billion inheritance is given away. Henry Clay Frick, that titan of American industry and a maestro in the art of making bank, didn't just climb the ladder of the Industrial Revolution. He practically built a new one, planting himself firmly as the world's second richest man at his peak. And his wealth, painstakingly forged in the fires of the coke and steel industries, didn't just surpass the fortunes of mere mortals. It even outshone that of his mentor and partner in industrial alchemy, Andrew Carnegie. But Frick was no one-trick pony. His shrewd business sense, tireless dedication, and knack for spotting golden opportunities in coke and steel turned his ventures into the Midas touch of the era. H.C. Frick and Company wasn't just another player in the game, it was the game, fueling the furnaces of steel magnates like Carnegie himself. By joining forces with Carnegie in 1882, Frick entered the steel industry's major league and became its MVP, riding the wave of America's steel-fueled ascendancy. But let's not box Frick into the all-work and no-play category. The man had a flair for the finer things in life, a veritable connoisseur of the arts with a taste as refined as the finest aged wine. His New York City mansion was a temple to luxury, and a Beaux-Arts masterpiece that shouted opulence from every limestone block. Built between 1912 and 1914, this Fifth Avenue fortress was more than a dwelling. It was a vessel for Frick's monumental art collection, destined to become the Frick Collection Museum. And the mansion's interiors? Think of them as the velvet glove on the iron fist of industry, with 16 rooms that were less rooms and more sanctuaries for the soul. This was a home built not just to live in, but to exhibit a collection that would make any art lover weep with joy. The so-called living hall alone, virtually unchanged for over 76 years, is an icon of Frick's enduring vision of grandeur and grace. And what of the art? Frick didn't just collect paintings. He collected masterpieces from Rembrandt's enigmatic The Polish Rider to Goya's dynamic The Forge. His collection was a roll call of art history's VIPs: Bellini, Vermeer, Gainsborough, El Greco. Each piece a badge of honor, each brushstroke a narrative of Frick's journey from steel magnate to patron saint of the arts. Today, the Frick collection stands not just as a museum, but as a cathedral to creativity, housing over 1,500 pieces that span centuries of European art. Thus, when Frick took his final bow in 1919, he didn't just leave behind a pile of cash. He left a treasure trove so immense it's hard to wrap your head around it. Imagine a fortune so vast that today it would be worth billions, a sum so eye-watering it underscores the monumental empire he built, brick by coke-fired brick. Clocking in at an estimated $145 million at his earthly departure, think a cool $2.9 billion today, Frick's fortune was the stuff of legends. Therefore, from humble origins to towering over the American Industrial Revolution, Frick's story wasn't just about making money, it was about making history. However, making the money for yourself is one thing, teaching your children, and then their children, requires an entirely different skill set. In order to learn exactly what happened to the mighty Frick fortune, let's roll back the gold-encrusted timepiece and start our journey in the rolling hills of rural Pennsylvania. Yet, as the story unfolded, it led to a pivotal moment that would shock both admirers and critics alike. In the early settlements of Pennsylvania, where opportunity beckoned the bold, the forebears of Henry Clay Frick made their mark. Originating from Swiss and German stock, these pioneers embodied the spirit of those seeking a fresh start in the New World. And their endeavors, primarily rooted in agriculture, contributed to the development of Western Pennsylvania, setting a stage far removed from the future industrial exploits of their descendant. Indeed, John W. Frick, Henry's father, was no stranger to this agricultural life, but harbored ambitions that stretched beyond the confines of farm work. Born into a modest farming environment, John was a man who saw value in education and the promise of innovation, despite the family's financial limitations. And Elizabeth Overholt Frick Henry's mother, brought to the family a legacy of industry from the Overholts, a family known in their locality for their work ethic and for making a mark in the distilling business. Elizabeth's influence imbued the family with a resilience and a strong sense of community, foundational values in the small town of West Overton, Pennsylvania, where Henry was born. Thus, the upbringing of Henry Clay Frick reflected these principles of hard work and community service. Born on the 19th of December 1849 as the eldest of 6 children, Henry's early life was framed by the simplicity of rural America, an existence marked by the labor of farming and the tight-knit community ties. And his education, starting in the local schools, revealed an early inclination towards business and a particular talent for numbers. Despite showing promise and a hunger for knowledge, financial pressures led to a pragmatic shift in Frick's path. Leaving Otterbein College to return home at 16, he began working as a clerk in a Pittsburgh mercantile firm, a decision dictated more by necessity than choice. This period of work outside the academic sphere offered Frick practical insights into the business world, an unplanned but invaluable continuation of his education. And these clerkship years were more than a stepping stone. They were a transformative period that allowed Frick to internalize the mechanics of business and the intricacies of the market. Therefore, this era in his life was instrumental in shaping his approach to business, fostering a meticulousness in financial matters and a strategic vision that could pinpoint and exploit nascent opportunities with precision. By 19, he had launched into his first venture into entrepreneurship, investing in a coke production operation. This bold move signaled the onset of an expansive business empire, and Frick's unyielding determination and keen business insight would soon propel him from the modest beginnings of rural Pennsylvania to towering heights in the industrial landscape. Henry Clay Frick's entry into the coke and steel sectors was a pivotal move that not only surged his wealth, but also solidified his position in American industrial history. And his strategic ventures in these industries were characterized by shrewd decisions and alliances, propelling him to a leading role in the Industrial Revolution. You see, the inception of Frick's journey into the coke business in the 1870s showcased his ability to identify and capitalize on emerging market trends. Coke, a critical fuel derived from coal for steel production, was growing in demand as the steel industry began to boom. Consequently, starting with a modest investment in a small coke operation, Frick's keen market insight and entrepreneurial spirit led to the rapid expansion of his enterprise, H.C. Frick and Company. And his efforts soon positioned him as the country's leading coke producer. Now, a defining moment in Frick's career was his partnership with Andrew Carnegie during the 1880s. Carnegie, a major figure in the steel industry, recognized the importance of having a stable coke supply for his mills. This partnership between Carnegie's steel manufacturing capabilities and Frick's coke production expertise was a powerful combination, enabling them to dominate the steel and coke markets. And Frick's role evolved significantly when he became chairman of Carnegie Brothers and Company in 1889, further tightening the integration between coke production and steel manufacturing. Now, this collaboration with Carnegie was crucial for Frick's financial success. As the steel industry flourished, driven by the expansion of railroads and the urbanization of America, Frick's wealth skyrocketed. His dominance over the coke supply chain provided him with a strategic edge and a lucrative slice of the industry's profits. Frick's influence extended further, with his contribution to the creation of the United States Steel Corporation in 1901. This amalgamation of steel and iron firms, including Carnegie Steel, into the world's first billion-dollar corporation, signaled a new chapter in industrial history. By the dawn of the 20th century, Frick had become one of the nation's richest individuals. His ventures into coke and steel, coupled with his alliance with Carnegie, yielded substantial returns, enabling him to diversify into real estate and finance. However, Frick's legacy is not without its controversies. His vehement stance against labor unions and his pivotal role in the Homestead Strike of 1892 underscore a darker aspect of his legacy. This confrontation at the Homestead Steel Works, which Frick managed on behalf of Andrew Carnegie, became one of the most notorious labor disputes in American history. And the decision to bring in private security agents from the Pinkerton Detective Agency to break the strike led to a violent clash, resulting in numerous fatalities and a wave of national condemnation. The incident not only spotlighted the harsh realities of labor conditions during the era, but also the extreme measures industrial magnates would employ to quash unionization efforts and maintain control over their workforce. Despite the shadow cast by such events, the impact of Henry Clay Frick on the industrial landscape of America is undeniable. His strategies, though often criticized for their ruthlessness, played a pivotal role in establishing a vast industrial empire. His legacy, though complex and controversial, underscores the multifaceted nature of industrial expansion and its far-reaching effects on American society and economy. However, his impact on his own children and descendants would be even more direct, which is what we'll investigate in the next chapter. Henry Clay Frick, indeed, left a legacy that extends far beyond his business achievements. Upon his passing in 1919, the division of his substantial estate revealed a clear preference for his daughter, Helen Clay Frick, who inherited the majority of his wealth. This decision highlighted her distinctive role within the Frick family and paved the way for her future endeavors in philanthropy and the arts, in sharp contrast to her siblings, who received significantly less. Now, many say Helen's inheritance was a deliberate recognition of her shared interests with her father, particularly in the realm of art. Entrusted with a considerable portion of his fortune, including his esteemed art collection and his New York residence, later transformed into the renowned Frick Collection Museum. This bequest appears to be a clear indication of Frick's trust in Helen's ability to further his cultural and philanthropic aspirations. However, the financial discrepancy in the inheritance was notable. Helen's share amounted to approximately $38 million, equivalent to over $400 million in today's currency, positioning her among the wealthiest women in America during that period. On the other hand, Frick's son, Charles Frick, received a lesser portion of the estate. Though still a considerable amount, it paled in comparison to what Helen received. Yet, nevertheless, Childs established his own legacy as a noted vertebrate paleontologist, contributing extensively to the American Museum of Natural History. Yet the repercussions of Frick's decision have had a lasting effect on his lineage. Helen's inheritance not only allowed her to enhance the Frick legacy through her philanthropic and cultural contributions, but also set a precedent for the subsequent generations. And her efforts laid the groundwork for her nephew, Henry Clay Frick II, and other descendants to pursue diverse interests and careers. Notably, Henry Clay Frick II became a distinguished physician and professor instead of a ruthless businessman like his grandfather, serving as chairman of the Department of Medicine at New York Hospital, Cornell Medical Center. Thus, his career, though distinct from the industrial and artistic spheres of his grandfather and aunt, was facilitated by the financial stability afforded by the Frick fortune, showcasing the varied paths Frick's descendants have taken, each shaped by the inheritance and the legacy left behind. However, it is certainly clear that the multi-billionaire lifestyle that Frick himself lived would not be the path of his later descendants, due in part to his personal dispensations of wealth. In order to better understand how that played and compare it to other old money families who kept and even increased their wealth, such as the Rockefellers and Mellons, let's jump to the next chapter. Now, Henry Clay Frick's approach to amassing and allocating his fortune was characterized by a pronounced emphasis on culture and philanthropy. His lavish expenditures, epitomized by his opulent New York City residence, now the esteemed Frick Collection Museum, and his vast art collection, underscored his profound appreciation for cultural and historical patrimony. And while these investments endowed his legacy with a rich cultural dimension, they did not enhance the financial inheritance bequeathed to his descendants in a direct manner. In a marked contrast, contemporaries such as the Rockefellers and Mellons opted for a diversified investment strategy, channeling their fortunes into ventures that assured enduring generational wealth. The Rockefellers, for example, significantly engaged in philanthropic endeavors through the establishment of perpetual entities like the Rockefeller Foundation. This strategy not only advanced public health initiatives, but also secured and augmented the family's wealth. Likewise, the Mellons' savvy investments across finance and industry sectors guaranteed a wealth expansion that benefited successive generations. The execution of Frick's estate further highlights the contrast in financial legacy management between his family and those of the Rockefellers or Mellons. Frick allocated a substantial portion of his estate to philanthropic causes, with the majority of his residual wealth inherited by his daughter, Helen Clay Frick. Though laudable, this philanthropic gesture did not facilitate wealth growth over time. Helen, inheriting a considerable fortune, prioritized arts and charity over investment strategies that could have furthered the family's financial base. And Frick's choice to bequeath the bulk of his estate to a singular heir, rather than distributing it among multiple descendants, concentrated the wealth but simultaneously curtailed its growth potential. Conversely, the Rockefellers and Mellons established trusts and foundations, mechanisms that not only safeguarded their wealth but enabled its financial proliferation across generations. Therefore, today, Henry Clay Frick's descendants, though comfortably affluent, do not figure among the echelons of modern billionaires. This status is the result of a series of factors deeply embedded in the family's ethos and historical decisions. And the Frick family's inclination towards privacy, coupled with an enduring commitment to philanthropy, has significantly influenced their financial standing and societal perception. Additionally, the Fricks have steered clear of venturing into large-scale business enterprises or adopting investment strategies aimed at significantly multiplying their wealth in today's economic climate. While they have managed their assets with competence, their approach has not been marked by the aggressive pursuit of capital growth, a strategy often employed by contemporary wealthy individuals and families to amass substantial fortunes. In a grand study awash with flickering shadows, Andrew Carnegie sits at a dark mahogany desk. The room is nearly dark, save for the small circle of light cast by an ornate oil lamp. The year is 1889, and outside the window the Pittsburgh steel mills are ablaze, lighting up the night sky like the stars glimmering above the Scotsman's palatial estate. However, inside, a different kind of inferno burns. It is the fire of an idea that will change the course of American history. With a clenched jaw and eyes gleaming with resolve, Carnegie leans forward, gripping his quill as if it were a sword. As he scribbles intently, he hesitates suddenly, feeling the weight of the next sentence. After taking in a deep, reflective breath, the magnate finally writes his declaration for the ages. The man who dies rich, dies disgraced. Relieved, Carnegie puts down his pen, contemplating the magnitude of the words he has just committed to paper. It is indeed a declaration that will reverberate through generations, shaking the foundations of American capitalism. Now, in our 21st century economic climate, the concept of old money signifies not just wealth, but the enduring legacy of families who have maintained and even greatly expanded their fortunes for generations. But what happens when a family intentionally breaks this cycle of generational wealth and gives away their billions on purpose, thus consciously pushing their status back down to the middle class? In this episode of Old Money Luxury, we will explore this exact enigma. Guided by the ideology of their patriarch, Andrew Carnegie, the Carnegie family went from amassing a colossal fortune that, for a time, crowned him the world's richest man, to strategically giving away more than $5.6 billion in today's currency. With that mystifying prelude as a backdrop, join us as we now recount the entire saga and describe how the Carnegies went from old money to no money. Our journey first begins on the misty lanes of Dunfermline, Scotland, where Andrew Carnegie first saw the light of day in 1835. Born to no ordinary family, young Andrew's lineage was steeped in the humble craft of weaving, a tradition nourished by his father, William Carnegie, and his paternal grandfather. The maternal side of his family tree branched off in a different direction. Andrew's mother, Margaret Morrison Carnegie, hailed from a line deeply involved in tanning and shoemaking. However, she was not merely a homemaker, but rather the daughter of George Lauder, a political stalwart who ensured young Andrew's mind was sparked by the heroics of Scottish legends like Robert the Bruce, Rob Roy, and William Wallace. The Carnegie family's daily life was framed by the quaintness of their weaver's cottage and the looming presence of the Industrial Revolution, a transformative period that remodeled Scotland's social fabric and economic vitality. Dunfermline itself was a hub of textile manufacturing, but the family's fortunes dimmed as factory systems replaced traditional handlooms. This decline subjected weavers like William Carnegie to financial hardships, casting shadows of poverty over their lives. Yet, William was not just a weaver caught in the crossfire of industrialization. He was a passionate advocate of the Chartist movement, which called for broad political and social reforms. On the other side, Margaret Morrison Carnegie's family was also politically active, adding another layer to Andrew's inherent views on social responsibility. But how did the teenaged Andrew navigate through a world shifting under his feet? The answer lies in his relentless pursuit of self-education. Formal schooling took a back seat as Andrew leaned into books and night school, supported by a family tradition that valued intellectual rigor and political activism. Libraries became his sanctuaries, thanks to Uncle George's introductions to literary masterpieces and historical narratives. These early experiences seeded his lifelong love for libraries and a philanthropic fervor to construct these reservoirs of knowledge across English-speaking countries. But Scotland's Industrial Revolution would soon not just alter the nation's economy, it would birth complex societal structures, trigger urban migration, and lead to governmental reforms. Amidst this tumult, it became clear that the Carnegie family needed to seek greener pastures. And to that, the burgeoning magnetic allure of the American dream, the notion that in the United States you can make it big through sheer grit and enterprise. And we arrive at the year 1848, when the Carnegies decide to pack up their hopes and dreams, cross the Atlantic, and settle in Allegheny City, Pennsylvania. Here, they would hope to find not just economic sustenance, but a stage upon which young Andrew could shape his indomitable destiny. Now, the Carnegie family had deliberately chosen Allegheny, the budding industrial suburb of Pittsburgh, for its abundant economic prospects. During this period, in the mid-19th century, America was a crucible of change, fueled by Manifest Destiny and the California Gold Rush of 1849. The nation itself was also on the cusp of an industrial revolution, transitioning from agricultural simplicity to industrial complexity. Allegheny specifically was a mosaic of diverse communities, including Germans and Croats, and offered a plethora of job opportunities in sectors like commercial trading, meatpacking, and leather tanning. However, despite these favorable conditions, the Carnegies faced initial hardships. William Carnegie's weaving business faltered, forcing 13-year-old Andrew into the laborious role of a bobbin boy in a cotton mill, where he would work 72-hour weeks for a modest $1.20 per hour, roughly $168 a month in today's currency. But not one to be confined by menial tasks, Andrew navigated through a series of roles that laid the foundation for his later empire. Positions such as messenger, secretary, and telegraph operator for the Pennsylvania Railroad served as an informal education in corporate structure and strategy. His affiliation with the railroad industry was particularly instructive. It offered lessons in management and cost optimization, as well as invaluable connections with industry giants like Thomas A. Scott and J. Edgar Thompson. These associations helped Carnegie secure early ventures like the Keystone Bridge Company, critical to the railway infrastructure. Subsequently, the Civil War amplified Carnegie's already diversifying portfolio, especially with his stake in the Columbia Oil Company. The conflict skyrocketed demand for both iron and oil, boosting his profits. Although eligible for military service, he opted to pay a substitute $850, or roughly 20,000 modern dollars, to enlist in his stead, a common practice among the affluent. And by the early 1870s, Carnegie had diversified his investments across a broad spectrum. His real breakthrough came in 1873, with the recognition of steel's untapped potential. Notably, he initiated the construction of the Edgar Thompson Works in Braddock, Pennsylvania, a groundbreaking facility introducing the Bessemer steelmaking process to America. Costing an estimated $1.2 million, or roughly $30 million in modern currency, The mill was a high-stakes bet on an unproven sector. Yet the gamble yielded significant dividends, as the facility didn't just elevate steel production standards, it fundamentally altered the fabric of American industry. In the years following, Carnegie further expanded and integrated his business holdings, including significant assets like the Scotia ore mines, Union iron mills, and Lucy furnaces. This methodical combination of resources and production capacities set the stage for the emergence of the powerhouse that became Carnegie Steel Company in 1889. Now, by the dawn of the 1890s, Andrew Carnegie was firmly established as an industrial colossus, presiding over a domain that extended well beyond the furnaces of his steel operations. His Carnegie Steel Company was the bedrock of global steel production, redefining benchmarks for both efficiency and profit. During his financial peak, Carnegie was an indomitable force in American enterprise, amassing his immense wealth chiefly through steel production endeavors. His holdings were extensive, comprising a diverse array of investments from lucrative real estate to varied business ventures. One significant acquisition was Scotland's Skibo Castle in 1899, which he transformed into a tranquil retreat, far from the industrial hustle. You see, Carnegie's monumental success was rooted in two pillars: innovative techniques and shrewd business acumen. His playbook included various methods aimed at ensuring Carnegie Steel remained an industry leader. Vertical integration, strategic mergers, and an uncompromising attention to cost efficiency were among them. For example, vertical integration was foundational to his business approach. He took ownership of entities along different stages of the steel-making process, from iron ore mines to railway companies. This end-to-end control enabled him to dramatically lower production costs while simultaneously optimizing operations for greater efficiency. His expansionary ambitions were further realized through mergers and acquisitions, notably the union of assets with H.C. Frick and Company in 1892. This move fortified the Carnegie Steel Company, giving him greater leverage over both the marketplace and the supply chain. An unwavering dedication to operational efficiency led him to adopt the Bessemer process, significantly quickening steel production while driving down costs. This made steel more affordable and accessible, altering the American landscape by facilitating the construction of bridges, skyscrapers, and expansive railway systems. However, this zeal for efficiency occasionally came at the cost of labor welfare. The introduction of cutting-edge technology and methods often preceded adequate safety measures. This tension came to a head in the Homestead Strike of 1892, a violent skirmish between workers and management that resulted in 12 deaths and created an enduring fissure between labor and leadership. Henry Clay Frick, who was the muscle of Carnegie Steel at the time, instigated the conflict through wage reductions. While Carnegie was geographically removed, quietly waiting back in Scotland, he had empowered Frick to act unilaterally, leading to a violent standoff that left an indelible scar on his otherwise storied legacy. Indeed, this harrowing incident triggered a significant self-reckoning for Carnegie, ultimately inspiring his gospel of wealth philosophy. This ideological shift diverged markedly from his peers' prevailing perspectives, emphasizing not just the ownership, but also the ethical stewardship of wealth. Published initially in 1889, the thesis proposed that affluence carried a moral duty to benefit society at large. Transitioning from theory to action, Carnegie would subsequently channel his resources into philanthropy, laying the groundwork for educational institutions, public libraries, and other community-focused entities. However, his philanthropic masterstroke would first need an exit strategy from the rough-and-tumble business world of industrial age America, and therefore he would need a powerful ally to help strategically guide him out of the corridors of ruthless Gilded Age finance. Now, at the turn of the 20th century, when the American steel industry was the backbone of a rapidly modernizing economy, legendary financier and Machiavellian businessman J.P. Morgan saw an unparalleled opportunity. Steel was not just a commodity, it was the lifeblood of industrializing cities, the burgeoning auto industry, and wartime production during World War I. By acquiring Carnegie Steel, Morgan could craft the United States Steel Corporation in his image, a monolithic entity that at the time was the world's largest company. This acquisition enabled Morgan to corner the steel market, and exploit the soaring demand for this vital resource. Thus, the 1901 sale of Carnegie Steel to J.P. Morgan for an astonishing $480 million, equivalent to over $13 billion in today's money, was more than just a business transaction. It provided Andrew Carnegie with the financial muscle to massively escalate his philanthropic activities, in sync with his own moral guidelines encapsulated in his Gospel of Wealth. With this philosophy as his North Star and seemingly endless cash in the bank after the sale of his empire, Carnegie proclaimed that the affluent were morally obligated to disperse their wealth in their lifetime, and this sale armed him with the capital to make a transformative societal impact. Carnegie's subsequent largesse left an indelible mark on multiple sectors: education, peace initiatives, and scientific research, to name a few. Among his most enduring contributions were the Carnegie Libraries, a global network of more than 2,500 public libraries. Indeed, his advocacy for public libraries came at an opportune moment when the American public library system was in its nascent stage, meeting the growing need for accessible knowledge. Consequently, these libraries were a catalyst for education and self-improvement across diverse populations, and they ushered in a new era of knowledge democratization. Local communities soon became the financial pillars of these libraries, providing about 80% of public funding. Furthermore, Carnegie's focus on libraries spurred a ripple effect, inspiring other local philanthropists to invest in their communities. These libraries were not just buildings filled with books. They were innovation hubs that enriched their localities and continue to serve their communities today. Beyond libraries, Carnegie's financial legacy led to the founding of educational behemoths like Carnegie Mellon University, an institution renowned for its contributions to science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Additionally, Carnegie Hall in New York City stands as an emblem of his patronage in the arts. This iconic concert venue has been a stage for countless musical legends and continues to uphold its reputation as an architectural and cultural jewel. However, the sale of Carnegie Steel also had ramifications for Carnegie's personal fortune. In keeping with his views on wealth dispersion, Carnegie systematically drained nearly all of his family's financial reservoirs. Now, in 1919, Andrew Carnegie's death led to a circumspect distribution of his considerable assets, personal belongings, a financial endowment, and real estate properties, among them a New York City townhouse and a Scottish vacation home. His spouse, Louise Whitfield Carnegie, a New York native, had encountered Andrew at the age of 23, thanks to her father. The two marked in 1887 at an intimate ceremony, subsequent to Louise signing a prenuptial contract that waived any future claim on Andrew's wealth. And Louise, frequently depicted as a person of kindness and moral caliber, had a prominent role in Andrew's altruistic pursuits as a board member of the Carnegie Corporation. Following Andrew's demise, she remained an active participant in the family's philanthropic ventures. Margaret Carnegie Miller, their sole child, inherited a modest trust fund, compelling the family to part with the Manhattan residence due to maintenance expenses. Born and raised in New York City, Margaret wed Roswell Miller Jr. in 1919. They had 4 offspring before their marriage disintegrated in 1953. Margaret served on the board of the Carnegie Corporation from 1934 until 1973 and remained an honorary trustee for life until her passing in 1990. Now, the 13 subsequent descendants of Andrew Carnegie have not accumulated billionaire status, but have thrived within the financial bracket of accomplished middle class to upper middle class professionals. Investments in diverse sectors like real estate and technology have been judiciously managed. Philanthropy, too, is an enduring family hallmark. William Thompson, a great-grandson, exemplifies this, having navigated personal setbacks, such as his mother Louise's polio, to perpetuate the family's charitable legacy. As former chair and honorary president of the Carnegie UK Trust, he oversaw the yearly allocation of £1 million to assorted causes. Admirably, in the 21st century era of intense public scrutiny and a mass media obsession with wealth, the Carnegies have kept impressively low profiles. Thorough internet searches on their lives reveal little. Social media platforms are devoid of family references, to the point where it's unlikely you'll find pictures of, or even the full names of, many living Carnegie family members. Such obscurity is indeed cultivated and cherished by this legendary clan, reflecting their old money ethos that prioritizes discretion over publicity. Where new money types may seek public affirmation through visible philanthropy or social media, the Carnegies exemplify different ethics. They have opted for a near-invisible public persona, contrasting sharply with the transparent lifestyles common among contemporary wealthy individuals. The preservation of privacy has thus become a family trait, and it adds another dimension to an already multifaceted family narrative. Andrew Carnegie was a public figure, but his heirs have largely retreated from the spotlight and the headlines, exemplifying a thoughtful navigation between the twin demands of affluence and social responsibility in today's world.